My name is Aurora Valdez. I'm 41 years old, and I was born in a dusty little village called San Miguel de los Atoyos, nestled deep in the Sierra Poblana, in the heart of Mexico. In the stories my mother used to tell, the ones whispered softly, so as not to stir up evil, San Miguel was more wound than town, about 30 adobe houses, cobbled streets, the old cracked-walled church on the hilltop, and at its base, a cemetery that kept digging up memories no one asked to relive. I spent most of my life trying to escape that place. But the farther I ran, the closer the whisper came, hissing behind my ear like fingernails on clay. I was raised by 3 women of faith. Mama, Isabel Valdez, 68, who prayed the rosary before the sun rose. Tia Godencha, 73, a midwife so old that half the village came out of her hands. And Abuela Rosa, 92, whom they called a witch knot, because of the herbs that healed, but because she knew too much about the living and the dead. I grew up hearing tales of babies born without a cry, candles lighting themselves at midnight mass, faceless children running across the square, until, at 16, I fell in love with a man who would become my tormentor, Pastor Emiliano Ortega. Then 28, he arrived from outside wearing a suit, holding a new Bible, his white smile promising revival. Within a month, half the village was on their knees before him. Within a year, I was on my knees on the cold sacristy floor, his hand pressing my neck down, telling me I was God's creation, and that my pain was proof of obedience. I told no one, because in San Miguel, a woman's shame weighs more than a priest's guilt. I had 3 miscarriages before I was 25, 2 in the 4th month, 1 at 7 weeks. Each silent ultrasound felt like proof that I was a living grave for my own children. Emiliano would say it was the enemy trying to steal our blessing. I thought, but never said, that the enemy had hands too warm and breath that reeked of alcohol. To escape, I took a job as a caregiver in Puebla, then Mexico City. I lived 12 years far away, but the memory of that village followed me like a street lamp shadow. The farther it stretches, the sharper it cuts the view. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Abuela Rosa raise that same slow, brown finger and murmur, El respeto romp maldition. I didn't believe her, and the price of doubt came high. 7 years ago, in the early hours of a Saturday, I got a call. Aurora, vuelve. Mama este algo no está bien. It was my younger sister. I caught the first bus. I arrived at dawn, the sky purple with swollen clouds. The house I was born in was dark, except for the flicker of a candle on the altar. Mama lay in bedskin gray, eyes glassy. Tia Godencha said it was cardiac arrest. But as she hugged me, she whispered, "Your mother heard it, Niña." That whisper, it's back. We buried Mama on Monday. When the earth still smelled of rain, Pastor Emiliano appeared beside the grave, starch-stiff suit, Bible open to some random psalm. He looked at me like he'd never forgotten the weight of my neck in his palm. He smiled, then the world spun. Behind him, I saw them, 2 small figures in white tunics, faceless, holding hands like children mid-rhyme in a game of invisible hopscotch. Did they blink? They had no eyes to blink. When I looked again, they were gone. I moved back into Mama's house. Every night around 3:13 a.m., I woke to muffled crying not of an infant, but of a child echoing from the herb garden where Abuela used to plant rue, guinea henweed, calendula. On the 4th night, I followed the sound, found 2 sets of tiny footprints pressed in the damp dust. They led to the gate, nothing but wind. When I turned back, I saw the windows of the church on the hill flickering like candles burning inside. I know what this sounds like, recycled legend to make city folks tremble. But legends don't leave bruises on the necks of women who sleep alone. The next morning, I woke with round bruises, child-sized fingers, 5 on each side, pressed deep into my skin. Emiliano preached from the pulpit that demons had been loosed and only he could exorcise them. That's when I realized the predator wears the pastor's skin. His exorcism was just another form of possession. I spent days reliving the stories I'd heard as a child: the shamed midwife, the mocking boy who lost his twins, the influencer who dared the abandoned church and died of fright, the skeptical cousin who felt his grandfather pull his feet, the faceless woman on the road, the scream that lives in the deep woods, ... All the pieces of this horror mosaic pointed to one center: disrespect breeds hauntings. And what if the disrespect came from the pulpit, from the very man holding the Bible? On the first Friday after the morning, I climbed the hill. I wanted to face the church alone. 2 candles lit the moment my feet touched the cracked altar. The air smelled of dry petals and stale host. And there I heard it, for the first time in 20 years, a whisper like wind slicing through mud walls, blowing directly into my left ear, saying, "Respect or blood." I didn't run. I said out loud, "I choose respect. I choose voice." The candle flames trembled, maybe in approval, maybe in mockery. I couldn't tell. Abuela Rosa always said, "The veil of respect covers the face of fear." At last, I lifted that veil, and everything I feared was waiting behind it, including myself. I returned home before midnight. On the way, I saw Emiliano in the street, alone, looking at his phone. The screen lit his face like he was underwater. As he passed me, I murmured, "Respect is cheap, Pastor." He laughed, said something about the price of sin being steep. I pretended not to hear. But that same night, the village awoke to screams coming from the parish mansion. They say, though I wasn't inside, that Pastor Emiliano was running down the halls, shouting that the faceless children were in his room, tearing out his eyelids. They found him in the square at sunrise, on his knees, fingernails bloody from trying to dig out his own face. It's been 18 months. He remains confined in a psychiatric ward in Puebla, repeating the same verse out of order, biting his own tongue until it bleeds. And me, I stayed to tell the tale, because someone has to write what the village elders only whisper door to door. There is pain that becomes a curse when it's buried under the sacrament. And curses only break when those who bled choose to speak. If you've listened to my story this far, prove you're not alone in the night. Comment, "I respect the whisper," below, leave a like, and subscribe to the channel. In the next part, I'll tell you what really happened inside that sacristy, how the same hands that blessed me were the ones that pushed me into hell. The cold room. When I was 11, my father locked me inside the cold room for the first time. It wasn't actually cold, at least not in temperature. It was the name my family used to refer to the sealed-off back storage room in our basement. No windows, just one naked bulb hanging from the ceiling that flickered every few seconds like it couldn't decide if it wanted to stay alive. It smelled of old rust and wet wood and something else I can never name. Something sour. Something that made my lungs tighten and my eyes sting. "You stay in here until you learn to respect the house," he had said, voice low, calm, like he was explaining math. No crying, no screaming, the room listens. I remember the first time because of the silence. It wasn't quiet, not in the usual way. It was like stepping underwater, the world muffled, the pulse in my ears growing louder with each passing second. I remember the sound of my breathing echoing back at me with a delay, as if the walls themselves needed time to imitate me. That first time I lasted 20 minutes before I started to hallucinate. I saw my mother's wedding dress hanging from the ceiling like a corpse. I saw fingers crawling across the floor. I saw my own reflection in the far wall, even though there was no mirror. The face that stared back wasn't mine. It had my eyes, but not my fear. After 40 minutes, he opened the door and simply said, "You may come out now. That was the beginning." And it only escalated from there. My name is Chelsea, and this story isn't about abuse in the traditional sense, not entirely. This is about the house I grew up in and what it took from all of us. I'm 29 now. I work in a high rise in a city that doesn't know me. I changed my last name. I erased the small town from my resume. I've convinced myself that the past is something you can fold and put away, like clothes that no longer fit. But lately, it's been knocking again, loud enough to shake the doors of my mind. I dream of the cold room. I wake up with my hands numb and my chest tight, as if the air around me has thickened. Last week, my sister called. I hadn't heard her voice in 4 years. "It's Mom," she said. "She's dying. You should come home." I told her I'd think about it. What I didn't tell her is that I've been seeing things. Shadows that lean the wrong way. Light bulbs flickering when I enter a room. My coffee turning cold seconds after pouring it. And always, always that sound. A low hum like an old refrigerator or a whisper pressed against drywall. I keep turning around expecting someone to be there, but I'm always alone. I live on the 12th floor of a modern apartment complex. There's nothing old here, nothing haunted. At least there shouldn't be. 2 nights ago, I found a small crack in my closet. Hairline barely visible. But when I pressed my ear against it, I heard breathing. Slow, deliberate breathing. Not mine. I haven't told anyone. I don't think anyone would believe me. Hell, I don't even believe myself, but I bought a plane ticket this morning. I'm going home, not for my mother, not even for my sister. I'm going back because I need to see the house again. I need to know if it's still there, if it still remembers me. The town is exactly as I left it, quiet, sun-bleached, and soaked in a stillness that smells like forgotten years. The trees look shorter, the sky more faded. Or maybe I just outgrew the scale of it all. My sister, Naomi, picks me up from the airport. Her face is thin, her eyes too bright, like she hasn't slept in weeks. We don't hug. We don't talk much. She drives in silence, except for when she glances at me and says, "You look like Dad." I try not to flinch. When we arrive, the house stands just as I remember it. White siding now yellowed with time. The porch sags slightly to the left. The wind chimes are missing. But the cold room, it's there. I feel it before I see it, like a migraine behind my eyes. Our mother is upstairs. Naomi doesn't invite me to see her. I don't ask. That night, I stay in my old room. The wallpaper has peeled away in strips, revealing claw-like marks underneath. At first, I think it's just old glue and rot. But then I remember I did that. I was 9. I thought there were voices behind the paper. I tried to peel them out. I fall asleep around 2 a.m. At 3:14, I wake up gasping. My room is freezing. The thermostat reads 68 degrees Fahrenheit, but my breath fogs the air. My phone buzzes. A notification. Cold room door open, 3:13 a.m. We never had smart locks in this house. I never connected this place to my phone. But the message is there. When I go downstairs, the basement door is open. I tell myself not to go down. I tell myself I'm not a child anymore. But I descend one step at a time, flashlight trembling in my grip. The air grows heavier. My skin prickles. And then I see it. The door to the cold room, slightly ajar. A faint light glowing inside. I push it open. The room is empty, clean, too clean. Like it was never used. But on the far wall, written in what looks like ash, are the words, "Welcome back, Chelsea." I stumble back, turn, run. But the door slams shut behind me, and the light flickers off. Darkness swallows me whole. Then the sound, breathing, close, and a voice I haven't heard in 18 years. Let's see if you've learned respect this time. I scream. I claw at the walls. I punch the door until my knuckles bleed. I scream until my throat tears. When the door finally opens, it's morning. Naomi stands there, face pale, eyes wide. You were never in there, she whispers. I checked 3 times. But my hands are raw, my feet blistered, my wrists bruised from pounding. That day I try to leave. I pack my things. I book a hotel, but the car won't start. And there's something written in the condensation on my rearview mirror. You can't leave the house wants something. It's waking up, and I think it remembers everything. They found me 3 days later, naked, shivering, curled up in the corner of my bathroom with my eyes clawed nearly shut and the words, "Let her out," scrawled over every surface in what looked like blood but wasn't. It was black, thick, like ink scraped from beneath centuries of mold. I don't remember writing it. I don't remember anything between the moment she whispered in my ear and the moment the paramedics pulled me out. What I do remember vividly is this. I never looked in a mirror again. Not willingly. They kept me under watch for 2 weeks. The psych ward was clean, quiet. White floors, pale walls, nurses with practiced, empty smiles. They gave me pills again. I took them this time. I needed the silence. I needed to believe none of it had happened. The doctor said it was a psychotic break, stress, isolation, sleep deprivation, hallucinations, all things I could not do. All things that felt comfortable to believe. But every night I dreamt of the mirror, of the hallway, of her, standing on the other side, waiting. And every morning when I woke up, there'd be water on the floor beside the bed. Always cold, always smelling of rust and rot. I tried to tell the staff. I tried to explain that something came with me, that I didn't leave it behind in the apartment, that it followed me here, that it was inside me. But the more I spoke, the less they listened. I started keeping quiet, smiling, nodding, learning the routines, until one day they told me I was better, stable, ready to re-enter the world. They discharged me on a Tuesday morning. The sky was a washed-out gray. The air smelled like metal. And as I walked outside for the first time in weeks, I passed a bus shelter and froze, because the glass wall reflected her, standing right behind me. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I ran. I moved out of the city that same week, got rid of every reflective surface I owned. No screens, no mirrors, not even polished silverware. I only shop in stores without windows. I carry a small piece of sandpaper with me and scratch every piece of glass I come across. I stopped talking to people. I stopped looking at anyone's eyes. You can see her there sometimes in the sheen of a pupil, in the wet shine of a tear. She's always watching. She wants out. And I've started to think, maybe I let her in. More than I realized. The other day, I heard a knock at my door. 3 knocks, precisely spaced. I didn't answer. I watched through the peephole. No one was there. But when I opened the door hours later, I found something waiting on my doormat. A shard of glass, triangular, jagged, and still wet. I didn't touch it. I swept it into a shoebox and buried. At 5 miles from my house in a wooded lot behind an abandoned church, I told myself it was over, that she couldn't find me again. But the next night, I woke up to find the mirror on my bedroom wall. The same mirror I threw from my balcony. The same one that had shattered, perfect, untouched, with a note taped to the bottom. You promised. I burned my house down the next morning. No, I didn't tell the fire department it was arson. No, I didn't wait for the flames to die. I drove until the tank hit empty, and then I walked. She followed. She always does. Now I live in a motel that smells like mildew and old smoke. Room 9. No TV. No mirror in the bathroom. The manager doesn't ask questions. He only stares a little too long when I check in every few weeks with a new name. There's another guest down the hall, a woman named Kayla. She has eyes that look too tired for her age and a voice like broken porcelain. She knocked on my door last night, said she'd been hearing whispers from the faucet, that the drain, and her sink gurgled names that weren't hers. That something touched her shoulder when she looked away from the mirror above her bed. I asked her if it was 3:17 when it happened. She went pale. She asked me how I knew. So I told her everything. And now I'm telling you. Because this isn't just about her anymore. It never was. She's one of many. The mirrors aren't just windows, they're doors. And they've been opening more and more every day. I've started to see things in other places too, not just mirrors. Reflections in puddles that ripple without cause. Static on the radio. That mutters in a tongue I'm beginning to understand. A child's drawing left at a diner table, showing a girl with no face standing behind someone asleep. I found another like me last week, a man named Lucas, who once worked at an art gallery in Chicago. He told me he found a painting of a mirror. Not a real mirror, mind you. Just paint on canvas. But it worked the same. It showed him things. And one day, it reflected something that wasn't in the room. He burned it, but he still sees it in dreams. It shows up on walls where nothing hangs, in flashes like memory or prophecy. He says he's being hunted. He says we all are. I wanted to believe he's wrong, but I've started hearing it again, that whisper, right behind my ear, like breath made of ice. It says my name like it belongs to it. It says, open your eyes. I haven't slept in 4 nights because I know what I'll see when I do. She's not content to stay behind the glass anymore. She's here, in the walls, in the corners, in the spaces between breaths, and she's smiling. Always smiling. Kayla's gone now. Her room's empty, clean, except for the mirror above the bed. It's cracked in the corner, just like mine once was. I went in this morning against my better judgment. I looked, and the hallway's there. Deeper this time, the teeth are gone. But the walls pulse louder, and further in I can see her, but she's not alone. There are others, children, women, men. Their faces are stitched in half, their eyes milky and moving, and at the very back is me, smiling, reaching toward the glass. I stopped counting the days after the sky changed. It wasn't immediate, not like the movies. No black clouds swirling above a church, no blood raining from open heavens, just a subtle shift. The light felt wrong. Brighter maybe, but with no warmth, like a hospital hallway where the fluorescents hum too loudly and everything smells like bleach and dread. I think it started the night I found the second mark. It was on my back. At first I thought it was a burn, a small oval above. My left shoulder blade about the size of a coin. But it didn't hurt, didn't itch. It just was. Like it had always been there and I had only just noticed. But I knew what it was. The first mark was the mirror. The second was the door. I began waking up with bruises I couldn't explain. Fingernail scratches across my ribs. Once, I bit down on my tongue so hard in my sleep that I woke up choking on blood. I bought new mirrors, smashed them, covered others with black paint. Still, reflections found me, in puddles, in windows, in the eyes of strangers. Once, in the curved edge of a spoon, I saw something crawling toward me, spider-like, fast, all knees and hair and hunger. I threw it away, didn't eat for 2 days after, and then came the dreams, if you can call them that. Each one begins the same. I'm walking barefoot on cold tile. The hallway is endless. I don't breathe. I don't blink. I just move. I pass doors, some open, some sealed shut. Behind every one, a version of me. Not exactly wrong. Just off. One version of me has no mouth. Another is covered in blood, smiling wide like a mannequin. Another stands, completely still, whispering into a broken phone. I keep walking until I hear her, not calling, not screaming, just humming. That same broken lullaby I haven't heard since the foster home. It goes, "Hush now, baby, don't you cry, mother's here. So close your eyes, if you wake, you'll lose your way. So sleep until the skin decays, I wake up screaming." And something always moves in the corner, always. I tried to record it once. Set up a phone across the motel room, pointed at the mirror. When I played it back, the screen was black except for the final 5 seconds. And then I saw it. My body sitting up straight in bed, but I was smiling. Eyes wide, and I whispered, "Into the camera. Do you see it now?" I threw the phone out the window, left the town before sunrise. I've started seeing numbers, etched into the glass of diner windows, scratched into the wood of bus stops, written in condensation on mirrors I've never touched. Always the same pattern, 74111. I thought maybe it was a date, or coordinates, or a warning. Until I met the man in the chapel. He wasn't a priest anymore, he made that clear. Said his name was Father Lemo. He wore no collar, just a stained shirt and a necklace made of teeth. Said he used to exorcise houses, not people. Said the places were worse. He looked me in the eye and said, "You've been tagged. What does that mean?" I asked. He just pointed to my back, to the second mark. "You're a key now," he whispered. "She's using you." He told me the numbers were a cycle, each digit a gate. Each gate a place she has touched, and that once she reaches 4, there is no closing her. I asked what the final number meant. He didn't answer. He just cried. I tried to ask more, but his mouth filled with black water. And then he collapsed, convulsing on the floor, whispering the lullaby through a mouth that no longer moved. He died with his eyes rolled back, and the last thing I saw in them was me, but with a mark across my face. The third, I buried him in the woods behind the chapel. Said a prayer I didn't believe, and moved on. But I don't walk like I used to. Every step feels like trespassing. Every door I open could be the last. The mirrors are hungrier now. They pull at me when I pass. I feel it in my skin. One motel bathroom mirror whistled at me. Another bled when I turned on the light. In one, I saw my mother. She died when I was 8, but there she was dressed in funeral black, crying into her hands, whispering a name I've never heard before. Aurora. I don't know what it means, but I dreamt of her that night. And she wasn't crying anymore. She was laughing, covered in moths, naked, pregnant with something that moved under her skin like worms in soup. And she looked at me and said, "She's almost born. I don't know what day it is anymore. Time slips. I wake up in places I don't remember going." Once, I woke up in the trunk of a car with photos of myself taped to the walls. In one of them, I was asleep. In another, I was smiling at the camera with no eyes. I don't know who took them, but every photo had the same thing scrawled on the back. "You open the door, you have to watch." I went back to the motel, and she was waiting, not in the mirror, in the room, standing in the corner, no face, no feet, just there. Her head tilted, hair floating like smoke underwater. And I heard it again, the hum, that melody, the lullaby. But this time, it came from inside my chest, like I was the one singing it. I screamed and threw the chair at her. It went right through. She didn't move, just watched, and then she said it. For the first time, only 2 more. I don't know what that means, but I know it's true. I'm unraveling. I saw a child yesterday staring into a broken television screen. There was no signal, no power, but the screen showed me hanging, upside down, smiling. The child turned to me and said, "She's learning your voice." I didn't ask what she meant. I couldn't. I was already running. But no matter how far I go, she finds me. Not just through reflections now, not just in dreams. She's in sound and static, in silence. Sometimes I'll be talking to someone and their voice glitches like a broken tape. And for a fraction of a second, she speaks through them. She doesn't always say words. Sometimes it's just screams. Other times it's my name. But not the name I use, the real one, the one I never told anyone. She knows it. And now, so do you. I started coughing up thread, thin, black, waxy string that pulled from the back of my throat like it had been stitched into my lungs. At first, I thought it was a nightmare, a leftover hallucination from the pills I had flushed. But then I found it the next morning, tangled in the bed sheets, wrapped around my wrist, and one end was tied into a noose. I didn't scream, I couldn't. I just sat there staring at it. That's when the knocking started. 3 sharp raps. Every night, always at 3:11 a.m., always from somewhere that shouldn't have doors. Once it came from the mirror, once from the sink drain. Another time, I heard it echo from inside my own mouth. No one else hears it. They never do. But I'm not the only one marked. I know that now. I found another. Her name was Sophia, a waitress in a roadhouse outside Nevada. She had the same mark I did on her ribs, left side, shaped like an eye with no iris. I saw it by accident. She raised her shirt to scratch her side, and I caught it like a spark in the dark. I asked her if she ever dreams of hallways. She went pale. Didn't answer. Just wrote something on a napkin and handed it to me before walking into the back room. I never saw her again. The note said, "Don't go past the 5th door. If she's humming, run. If she's crying, it's already too late." I folded the note and kept it in my boot. That night, I dreamed of doors. I always dream of doors now. But this time, the 5th door opened by itself. I didn't want to look inside, but I had to. Behind it, I saw a cradle, rocking slowly. Something shifted beneath the blanket, small, wet, breathing in shudders. I stepped closer, and the crying stopped. That's when I saw it wasn't a baby. It was my own heart, still beating, still stitched, and the thread pulsing through it was black. I woke up bleeding from my nose and gums. When I checked the boot, the napkin was gone, replaced with something else, a tooth, not mine, too long, too sharp, wrapped in hair. I threw it into the river that morning. It floated, and then sank as if pulled. There are things watching me now, not just her. Things in the static between. Radio stations, in the hiss of dead air, in the flicker of motel televisions that haven't been plugged in for years. They study me, I feel it. And when I pass mirrors now, sometimes I don't reflect at all. Or worse, my reflection stays after. I move, smiling, pointing. Once it mouthed a word I hadn't spoken in over a decade. Yelena. That was my sister's name. She died in foster care. Or at least, that's what they told me. But lately I've been hearing her voice. She hums the lullaby too, only slower. Sometimes backward. Other times in a language I don't understand, but my bones do. They ache when she sings. She called me last night on a payphone that shouldn't have worked. I didn't dial. It just rang. I answered and heard, "You were supposed to stay asleep." Then click. Then silence. I've begun losing time again. I found myself in a roadside chapel, kneeling before a pulpit made of mirrors, all cracked, all humming. And each one, a different version of me was praying. Some crying, some laughing, one cutting. They all looked up at the same time and whispered, "One more." I ran until my lungs screamed. The next day, my arm had a new mark, the third. It looked like a window this time, with bars and something. Behind it, watching, that's when I realized what the marks were doing. Each one isn't just a symbol, they're openings. Each new mark is another crack in the barrier, another invitation, and I've nearly reached the fourth. Father Lemo was right. There's no going back after 4. But I have to know. I have to see her. See what's coming. I followed a trail through 3 towns, dead ends, warnings, motel rooms scorched from the inside. Places where the clocks had melted, the dogs barked empty corners, and the water turned to ink. They all pointed me to the same place, Red Hollow. A ghost town swallowed by trees, forgotten by maps. Locals don't talk about it. Those who do twitch. I found it just before sunset. No signs. Just absence. I passed through a broken fence and into the silence. No birds, no wind, no decay, just stillness. And there, in the center, a house with no doors, only mirrors. Built entirely of them. Walls, roof, even the ground inside. It hummed, louder than I've ever heard. And from inside, I heard her voice, not humming, not crying, singing, words. This time, clear, cold, terrible. Little lamb, you've wandered far, open mocks on every scar. Now the wolves begin to feed, and from your mouth, my roots will bleed. I didn't move. Couldn't. Then I saw her. Not her reflection, her. Emerging from the wall like smoke made solid. No face, just an absence where one should be. Limbs too long. Fingers like knitting needles. And from her belly, thread spilled, miles of it. She held something in her hands. It was me, not dead, not alive. Just paused. Eyes open, skin peeled, inside out. And she whispered, almost home. The 4th mark burned into my chest. It wasn't a symbol. It was an eye, open, alive, blinking, looking up at me. I screamed until my throat tore. Ran blind into the woods, crashing through branches, through memory, through myself. That was 4 days ago, maybe 5. I haven't spoken since. The threads keep coming, longer, thicker, from deeper inside me. I cough them up every night, and they tangle around the bedposts. Sometimes they tie themselves into words, like birth, witness, stay awake. My dreams no longer end. They keep going even when I open my eyes. Reality doesn't stitch back the same way. Colors don't match, sounds repeat. And now she doesn't need the mirrors anymore. She stands at the edge of every room and waits, because now the 4th mark is complete, and I think I am the 5th.